Buen día, alumnos. ¿Cómo están? Espero que estén bien. Me llamo Austin y soy su profesor de español. Les doy la bienvenida al canal. Y para mis suscriptores, bienvenidos de nuevo. Hoy hablamos de algunas palabras en español que pueden ser un poco confusas para los anglohablantes. Ya, todavía y aún. Firstly, we should know two things before we get started here today. These three words are all adverbs, and they're most often used to modify verbs. Secondly, todavía and aún are synonyms of each other and can be used pretty much interchangeably. Okay, so we just took a whole lot of confusion out of this whole thing. We now know that we're basically just dealing with modifying verbs in one of two ways. So what are those two ways? Well, the simplest, best explanation that I can give you, and really the only thing that you need to know here, is that ya is an adverb that describes change, and todavía and aún are adverbs that describe continuation. So to put it another way, if you look at a scenario from 2 points in time and compare the before and after, ya tells us that something is different between these 2 points, whereas todavía and aún tell us that something is the same between these 2 points. All right, well, there's your explanation. You're all set. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Adios! Okay. It's a bit more complicated than that. And my job as your profe is to give you the complete picture. So let's dive right in. What do you say? Now, I think the best way that we can do this is by comparing these words at different points in time. Remembering that ya is used to indicate a change related to an action, and todavía and aún are used to indicate no change related to that action. So let's start by looking at the present tense and how we're going to use ya versus todavía and aún. Firstly, ya in the present tense can be used to say already, now, or right now, and is basically a synonym for ahora. So as an example, if you're chilling in your room watching this video and suddenly somebody starts knocking on your front door, but before you can get up and answer them, they start knocking harder to try to get you to come to the door quicker. Well, you can shout across the hall and say, "Ya voy," which means I'm already coming or I'm coming now. In this example, the change that ya is demonstrating is that you're now coming to the door when before you weren't. Or let's say maybe you're at a party, but it's starting to get late, so you have to get going. You can tell your friends, "Ya me voy," which means I'm leaving now, or I'm already leaving. And ya is used to convey the change in that only at this point in time are you actually leaving the party. All right, now let's stay in the present moment for a second and talk about how we use todavía and aún. Now these words are used to say still and are used to demonstrate some sort of continuation of an action. So to ask our friend if they're still working, we can say, "Todavía estás trabajando," because we're trying to find out if the action of them working is continuing or not. Pretty simple, right? Okay, so what if we want to use these words in the negative sense? Well, ya no is going to translate to no longer or not anymore. The idea is the same as earlier, but now we're talking about an action not happening when before it was. So if I ask my friend, "Todavía estás trabajando?" they can answer and say, "No, ya no estoy trabajando," to say, "No, I'm not working anymore." Now, if we want to say todavía no or aún no, we can think of that as still not, but what we're really saying is not yet. So if I lost my job and I've been looking for a new one for a while but haven't found anything yet, I can say something like "Todavía no tengo trabajo," which could be looked at as either I still don't have a job or I don't have a job yet. They're both making the exact same point, that something wasn't the case before and it's still not the case after. All right, so I know that seems like a lot of information just now, but let's just do a quick recap before we move into our other tenses. In the positive sense, ya is used to describe something that wasn't the case before, but now it is, while todavía and aún describe something that was the case before and it still is. And if we want to use it in the negative, ya talks about something that was the case before, but now it isn't. Whereas todavía and aún talk about something that wasn't the case before and it still isn't. Or to say that something hasn't happened yet. All right, is this making sense so far? Okay, let's go ahead and move back in time and see how we can use these words in the past tense. Now, I've got some good news for you. Todavía and aún still keep the exact same meaning regardless of what tense we use them in. That something was or wasn't the case before a certain point, and it still is or isn't the case after a certain point. It doesn't matter if we use it in the past, present, or future. The still and not yet meanings are still exactly the same. The only thing that's really going to change is ya. Isn't that a funny coincidence? Only the word that describes change is the one that changes meaning in different tenses. So in the past tense, ja is used pretty much exclusively to say already, to talk about something that wasn't done at a certain point, but by the ending point, it had already been done. Now, if you're using it to ask a question, it can translate to already, but it also translates to ask if something happened yet. So if we're out doing some shopping and our significant other calls, they might ask us,
¿Ya has comprado la leche?
Which means, have you already bought the milk? Or have you bought the milk yet? These questions are both functionally identical, so we both use ya. And you can answer this question either by saying, sí, ya la compré, to say, yes, I already bought it. Or, no, aún no la he comprado, to say, no, I haven't bought it yet. You see the difference there? We started out by needing to buy milk, and ya tells us that a change has taken place and that we did, in fact, buy the milk, whereas aún no tells us that we have not bought the milk and no change has taken place. All right, now let's take a look at how we can use these words in the future tense. Again, todavía and aún will mean the exact same thing in the future, whether we use them in the positive or negative sense. Ja, when used in the future, can mean, well, a number of different things, depending on the context. It can mean things like soon, someday, sometime, at some point, or really anything along those lines, to describe an action which will either take place or stop taking place at some point in the future. As an example, if you're in an argument with someone who just does not want to listen to your advice, you can say something like, haz lo que quieras, ya verás, to mean, do whatever you want, you'll see. So there's a change that we expect will take place at some point in the future. Another great example you'll want to put in your toolkit is ya vuelvo and ya vengo, which are both ways of saying I'll be right back. All right, so now that we know how to use these words on their own in the past, present, and future, let's ramp up the intensity a bit and look at some handy phrases with these words. Now, I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, but using these expressions can seriously level up your Spanish game. So let's start with ya. If you can master these phrases, ya might just become your new favorite word in Spanish, since there's just so many different ways that we can use it. Firstly, we've got ya que, which means since, or seeing as, or now that, to say that since something is a certain way, something else needs to take place. For example, ya que no sirve mi nevera, tengo que comprar otra means since, or now that, my fridge doesn't work, I have to buy another. So basically, it's a way of describing a certain change that has taken place due to something else happening. Now, our next phrase is ya casi, which means very nearly. Now, casi on its own means almost, but adding that ya adds extra emphasis. So if your friend is waiting for you to show up to their house, you can tell them, ya casi llego, which basically means I'm nearly there. Next up, we've got ya mismo, which uses the word mismo to add extra emphasis to something happening now. So it's like saying right now or immediately. So if you're a parent and your kid's acting up, you can tell them, ve a tu cuarto ya mismo, which means go to your room right now. And our last phrases are ya basta and ya estuvo, which are both ways of saying that's enough, mostly used when we're really annoyed about something. Now, we can also use ya on its own more than once to say whether and or. So you can say something like ya de día, ya de noche, a mí me encanta una buena taza de café, to say whether by day or by night, I love a good cup of coffee. Which is true for me, especially when I'm up until 2 a.m. sometimes editing videos. And finally, ya can be used on its own in a couple ways. One way is like saying that's it, to convey a sense of emphasis on the finality of something. For example, when I'm at work and my Spanish-speaking customers ask me what to do with a machine that they're bringing in, I'll often tell them, déjela ahí y ya, which just means leave it there and that's it. So they know I'll handle the rest from there. Lastly, you can use ya as a way of expressing agreement or understanding about something. For example, if someone just explains something to you and they ask, ¿entendiste? You can reply by simply saying, ya. Okay, so that's everything that we've got for ya. So now let's talk about some phrases with todavía and aún. Now, although they are synonyms of each other, what's really the difference between these two words? Well, when used on their own to say still, aún is generally considered to be the more formal option, and todavía is usually considered to be more colloquial. In my experience, however, aún is often used more in phrases as a way of saying even, used with words like mejor, peor, mayor, menor, más, or menos. So if we want to say, this movie is even better than the last one, that's going to translate as, esta película es aún mejor que la última. And yes, we could absolutely say todavía mejor, but with expressions like this, it's more likely, generally speaking, that you'll hear aún being used. All right, so we're just about ready to start with our practice round, but I have a confession to make for you guys. I've been holding out another word up to this point, and it's this one right here. Now, this word, spelled without the accent mark and pronounced as a single syllable, is a bit different from its accented brother. And it serves a purpose that todavía and aún with the accent just can't really be used for. And that's to say even when we're not making comparisons such as better, worse, more, or less. This can be used to express limits, like when we say, it's never too late to learn Spanish, even in your 60s, which gives us, nunca es tarde para aprender español, aún a los 60. It can be used to describe situations that happen even in certain contexts, like, aún teniendo la alarma puesta, me desperté tarde, which means even having the alarm set, I woke up late. And I've got two phrases to share with you real quick here. The first is aun cuando, to say even when, to say things like, even when you're 60, you'll need your sisters, which gives us, aun cuando tengas 60 años, necesitarás a tus hermanas. And the other phrase is aun así, which means even so. So we can use it to say something like, la casa es muy pequeña, aun así me encanta, to say, the house is very small, even so, I love it. Now, aun and aún, although they're different words, are oftentimes mixed up by native Spanish speakers when they're speaking or writing. Spanish has got just such a fast flow to it that being able to really hear the difference between aún and aún is pretty difficult. And native speakers oftentimes drop accent marks from their writing if they can get away with it. Now, I mention this to you only because you might see someone use aún where it makes more sense to say aún and vice versa. So just be aware of that as you're navigating through the Spanish-speaking world, okay? All right, so now that we've got a full understanding of how to use these three words, let's get started with our practice round. I'm going to give you a few example sentences in English and translate them into Spanish with our target words left out. Now, it'll be up to you to decide whether we're using ya or todavía/aún. I'm going to leave aún out of the practice round because the main point of the video is making sure you understand the difference between ya and todavía/aún. So that's going to be our focus here. I'm going to give you 3 examples with 2 blanks each, and you'll need to decide the correct words. You'll get 5 seconds to decide before I reveal the answers. So feel free to pause the video and jump around as much as you need to before you lock in your choice. ¿Ya estamos listos? Empecemos. Our first example is, have you ordered the food yet? I still need to send you the money. Our translation with the words left out is, ¿has pedido la comida? Necesito mandarte el dinero. All right, 5 seconds, te toca a ti. ¿Ya has pedido la comida? Todavía necesito mandarte el dinero. All right, now our second example is, you haven't called that customer yet? It's already 5 o'clock. Our translation is, ¿no has llamado a ese cliente? Son las 5. All right, 5 seconds, you've got this. ¿Todavía no has llamado a ese cliente? Ya son las 5. All right, are we ready for the last one? Let's see. I'm still learning Spanish, but someday I'll talk easily with natives. Our translation is, estoy aprendiendo español, pero hablaré fácilmente con los nativos. Okay, 5 seconds. Todavía estoy aprendiendo español, pero ya hablaré fácilmente con los nativos. Okay, so how'd you guys do? Did you get them all right? If so, eso es genial. Give yourself a pat on the back. You did awesome. And if you missed any, don't worry. Just keep practicing and try to remember that key principle going forward. Ya is used to describe something changing between 2 points in time, and todavía and aún are used to describe something staying the same between 2 points in time. Just keep practicing and you'll be a master in no time. Ok, pues eso es todo el tiempo que tenemos por hoy. Espero que te haya gustado y que hayas aprendido algo útil hoy. Déjame un comentario si tienes alguna pregunta acerca del video de hoy y te atenderé. Muchísimas gracias por ver. Que tengas un día bonito. Chao.